Hey everyone, Mike here for Helm to Tower. Yeah, it's time to talk about Destiny 2. We know from last week there was some pretty rough news going into the future of Destiny, with Bungie having massive layoffs at the studio and a lot of restructuring within the company. I wanted to kind of give my own thoughts on some of these things and, my feelings on what we're going to be doing here on the channel with Destiny in the future. Largely, it's not going to change that much. You've probably already seen I've been doing more videos of other games here. I still plan to cover Destiny on the channel, but again, there's already I've already started kind of covering more games in a broader genre of live service, looter shooters, and MMO RPGs, action RPGs, whatever. I'm gonna keep still doing that. Destiny will just be one of the games I cover. I feel like it would have been weird if I didn't talk about this stuff that happened with Bungie. I have two articles here, one from Jason Schreier, kind of going over the general layoffs and the vibes that are currently within Destiny and how we got here. And then I also have an article from Paul Tassi, who kind of gives some clarifications on some of what to expect from the future of Destiny beyond some of the episode content that we're already getting now. I kind of want to just give my own thoughts on all this stuff. Again, I think it would just felt weird having been a channel that kind of started as a Destiny channel. I had a podcast with two good friends that ran for a while that talked about Destiny pretty much almost every week. It just would have felt weird not to talk about this stuff in any way, shape, or form. So here we are. Let's get into these articles and I'll kind of give my thoughts as I go through them. So here we go. So first up from Jason Schreier. Here we go. The company says Bungie, the storied creator of the Halo franchise and the online game Destiny, said it laid off 220 people Wednesday. Those cuts included several top executives who have been with the company for decades, according to people familiar. The team that were hit hard included audio, narrative, and player support. Those were definitely pretty important parts and pillars of Destiny. So to hear those got gutted pretty hard. Like audio, who doesn't love a lot of the music that comes out of the Destiny franchise? It's some of the best there is in some respects, in my opinion. Narrative team, obviously I know, if you look way back in the history of Destiny, yeah, you could say the narrative was nothing, but I think it is, but now looking at it now, think of how much of a huge feat it is to have taken this live game and now made it probably one of the best stories, narrative arcs and stories in gaming through all the lore you can read through Destiny, all the stuff, and where it is now. I think it is incredibly impressive, and the teams that were responsible for that just lost some of the biggest important players to that. It's just crazy. And of course, player support too. These are the people that take feedback from the community, good or not, and try and parse that and try and make the game better. And now that's going to be even more challenging for them to do. It's just crazy to hear these are the teams that got hit. It's just crazy. The company said it's also hoping to move 155 others to Sony Interactive Entertainment at large, while a separate group will spin out to making a new game company within Sony to continue working on the incubation project codenamed Gummy Bears. Gummy Bears, I heard, was some kind of MOBA light game where it's also more action-y focused, also some Smash Bros elements also inspired by it. Sounds maybe a little interesting. I guess we'll just have to see what that ends up being. As a Destiny fan, I don't know if it sounds too appealing to me, but hey, I've always heard when people bring this this project up that it seems promising. So it could be a cool game for them, and I'm glad that there was at least some effort to make sure the people working on this stuff didn't all just lose their jobs. Because there was 220 people that lost their jobs. At least some people came out unscathed. I don't know. That's actually not true. It's just a whole mess regardless. But trying to remain hopeful, and I'm wishing, again, 220 people lost their jobs at Bungie. Super incredibly talented people, and I just wish them the best. I hope they can land on their feet. I think they all have the talent and know how to find work in the industry, but of course it is a crazy time, is a tumultuous time across the industry at large, with it just feeling like it's getting gutted constantly and being mismanaged horribly by awful CEOs and leadership that just kind of want to roll their next check so they can buy their fancy cars or do whatever the fuck. Just a rough time all around. That's where we're at. Let's keep going here in this article. In early 2022, during an era of low interest rates and strong post-COVID sales across the industry, Sony purchased Bungie for $3.6 billion, looking at Destiny 2 as a model for its growing ambitions in live service games. Flush with cash, Bungie hired hundreds of new staff members and pursued myriad of incubation projects, including mobile versions of Destiny, remakes of old games, and new franchises. But the following year, at the industry's pandemic surge slackened, Bungie grappled with several problems. An expansion called Lightfall failed to impress fans, while Marathon, an extraction shooter game that was well into development, struggled to coalesce. Meanwhile, the next Destiny 2 expansion, called The Final Shape, was also floundering and needed more time to come together. I think that's, recapping a lot of things that if you've been following Destiny, of knowing, Lightfall was a pretty sour point for the game at large. Marathon remains to be just confusing, and I wish the many talented people still working on that the best, but as a Destiny fan, I have very little interest in Marathon as of right now. Granted, we've only seen very small pieces of it, so it could, once we get gameplay or details about the game itself, who knows, maybe my thoughts could change. But right now, I'm not really looking for a PvP extraction shooter like none of the games that are currently on the market that would fall under that banner. Hunt Showdown, Tarkov, those kind of games have never appealed to me ever. And granted, this will probably have elements from those, but maybe trying to do its own thing at the same time. We'll just have to see. But yeah, just right now, feel the passion or excitement for Marathon at all. Continue article here. During one grim meeting in late 2023, according to the people familiar, Parsons told staff that the company had missed its revenue targets by 45% and was losing money. Bungie delayed The Final Shape and Marathon and subsequently laid off around 100 people. Feeling pressure from a parent company seeking increased profitability and facing its own set of challenges, Bungie executives charged a new course. Both Marathon and Destiny 2 received new leadership as Sony's video game unit replaced its CEO and laid off 900 people. So that's, again, Sony even having its own struggles in and of itself. Employees were hopeful that the extra time on The Final Shape would lead to a great product, and the expansion received rave reviews. But the critical acclaim had little impact on the deeper cuts that were already in the works at Bungie. As Game Files' Steven Dotilla reported on Thursday. I won't go into Steven's article too much, but yeah, largely, more or less, no matter how well, the only way Final Shape would have led to probably not having these layoffs if it somehow magically doubled the amount of players that were brought into Destiny, and there's just no way that it could have done that. Because we know, it's received rave reviews. It is still one of the highest rated games on Metacritic now. And it's an expansion for a 10-year-old game. It's easily one of the best expansions they've done for the franchise at large. Everyone agrees, but at the end of the day, it was an expansion that was the end, sort of the end of a saga, right? It is only going to appeal to the fans of Destiny and who have been to Destiny for so many years. It's not going to be. I think you're going to find very, very, very little amount of people comparatively to other expansions that were getting into Destiny the first time. I think Lightfall had a bigger potential for there to be way more new players coming to it, and that just kind of was botched so hard that clearly, if they were somebody who came into the game at that point, they probably left at that point and probably don't want to come back. That's just is how it is. Them expecting that is really just bad. Again, leadership being just bad and not fully aware of the realities of things and thinking the right way. Let's continue here. One of Bungie's big bets was Payback, an incubation project set in the Destiny universe that would shake up the formula in major ways, according to people familiar. It would pivot from a first-person to a third-person perspective and allow players to use the franchise characters to explore a large world while cooperating to battle monsters and solve puzzles. The pitch took elements from popular games such as Warframe and Genshin Impact. There was a lot that ended up coming out about this game or this project in particular that's now also been axed. This was what Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy were working on. We've also learned that are no longer at the studio because of this whole process. Payback was canned more or less, and that was going to be their project that they were going to start helming. And clearly, since that did not end up going anywhere, I don't think they had any other place to go within the studio, so they just left. This is kind of crazy to me. He's going to go. Jason's gonna go into a little bit more, but like the fact that this was kind of like the next sort of step in Destiny rather than just a Destiny 3 is still kind of wild to me. You know, again, I was always in the camp, you know, if you've listened to the Helm Tower podcast, you know, in its run, you heard me kind of a few times go, like, I never expected Destiny 3 to be right after the Realms of Final Shape. Like, it would have, if we would have gotten it all, it would have been years and years away. And that's still the case more than ever, because we've learned that, like, they weren't working on it whatsoever, because Payback was not that, but it was going to be more like a spin-off to Destiny, and it was going to have elements from, I guess, Warframe and Genshin Impact, where, like, I think, like, the Warframe stuff made more sense to me, because, you know, we've seen a lot of games now in recent years try and ape off of Warframe, because that game has gone on just as long as Destiny, and clearly, like, a lot of studios tried first person shooters and like looter shooter live service games, and it just didn't really work out for them. But, you know, maybe doing like a Warframe, like, I guess you could say, made more sense, because we got stuff like Wayfinder, which I've covered on the channel. You know, that's had its own weird problems, but, you know, was largely still an interesting project. I think it's still a pretty good game, even its current iteration, as it kind of finds its footing in early access still. We just got the first Ascendant, which I've also covered on the channel, which is like straight up like, you know, you could call that like a Warframe ripoff, frankly. But I still think it's like an enjoyable game, and there's tons of people playing it right now still. So like, I see the appeal of that stuff. I think Genshin Impact was more from the idea of like Genshin was like about exploring a big open world, and you'd add like big chunks to the world as it progressed. I don't think they were looking at open world Genshin Impact as we're gonna make a Destiny gacha game. I think it was more gonna be like, you're gonna explore this open world, and you're probably gonna have the Warframe element of like you're crafting, like, I don't know, Zavala or Ikora, and you can find the pieces for this character and then craft them to then play in this game. That's what would have made more sense to me, but who knows? Again, that's just me throwing out, you know, ideas to what I think it was when they say it would have been like a Warframe Genshin sort of style thing. Who knows? It's axed anyway, but it's still kind of crazy that was like the idea they had, rather than just going into making like a Destiny 3 or some kind of bigger evolution of Destiny 2, which I think should have made more sense, because again, that was the thing that was making the money. Crazy stuff. Let's see. I'm going to keep going through. Some staff said they're optimistic about the vision for Destiny 2 under new director Tyson Green, a Bungie veteran who took the helm earlier this year. In the coming months, people said Bungie will look to retain and attract players with smaller scale content drops modeled after Into the Light, a well-received update in April added a new mode to the game. Rather than selling this content, they said Bungie will aim to release it for free, along with overhauls to activities that it hopes will appeal to hardcore players. Other vague plans for the future include a storyline that will feature characters and worlds that Destiny has not yet explored. Fans have wondered if Bungie might one day start anew with a Destiny 3, but such project has not been in development. According to people familiar, Bungie is instead looking to create a smoother onboarding process for Destiny 2, such as rebranding to attract new players who might be turned off by a game that can now feel impenetrable to those unfamiliar with its ample proper nouns. Those left at Bungie will now have to make do with a smaller staff, tighter schedules, and a company that looks significantly different than it did 3 years ago. Longtime veterans Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy exited this week, according to people familiar, as did several other top leaders, leaving lingering questions about the future of decision-making at Bungie. So there you go. That's largely where we're at. Again, the focus is on Destiny. They like the stuff about the free content and the Into Light style updates that will come to the game. Is further clarified in this article from Paul Tassi. So I'm going to jump into that article now, because he gives kind of further clarification to kind of what's to come for Destiny. A lot of this stuff, keep in mind, is going to be things that are coming post episode content. We're still getting as is. We're going to be getting, you know, Echoes is going to finish out, and then we're going to go into Revenant, and then we're going to go into Heresy after that. And then we know Destiny 2 Frontiers. And Frontiers is what kind of this new model is going to look like for Destiny. And that's kind of what we have here. Paul Tassi sort of getting some clarification from some of these insiders as well. So let's jump into that. The larger content packs though not true expansions, will contain familiar elements like new destinations, raids, and campaigns, just much smaller on the whole. Try to keep its size maybe, though not the same format. A goal is developing more replayable, unique activities like the coil, and if we are leaving the system, which is speculation right now, this is where we'd see those new worlds to visit. I'm not sure if this is free. So yeah, that was the kind of a big thing, is like there will be basically still sort of like a smaller version of like a standard expansion we've gotten in previous years that is more of the size of, I guess, Shadowkeep, or maybe like Beyond Light, I guess. That'll be kind of the size of the expansions going forward. You'll still get a raid of some kind, and then that'll come out basically at one part of the year, and then that'll be the main release of a given year. And that is probably how Frontiers kicks off. And then 6 months later, there will be another pack of smaller content that's more something along the lines of what we got with Into the Light, and this should be free. Between these, there may be something akin to current episodes, though the scale and schedule is not clear. Generally speaking, the idea is less sprawling one-off campaigns and a greater focus on replayable activities. The hobby aspects, with the new Frontiers format, there aren't widespread updates that will hit every facet of the game at once like most expansions used to. It'll be less than players are used to, not to say there will not be things worth playing. So there you go. That's kind of, again, when Frontiers kicks off, it'll start with like one of these smaller in scope expansions. It will presumably be outside of the current, Sol system universe, and be going out beyond that to, find a new planet to explore. We'll just have to see what that is. There'll be some kind of interlinking seasonal content, but it's probably going to be even smaller scale. It might be episodic content, but it'll be smaller in scale. And then we will mid-year get sort of a big free Into the Light content sized update with like some kind of new highly replayable activity with a bunch of loot to go get. I don't know, personally that doesn't sound like terrible to me, but obviously it is way step down of how much stuff we're getting, right? It's hard to say, because that's going to be a year away. I still think this sounds okay if it's just priced accordingly, right? Like if they come out next year with this Frontiers expansion, whatever it ends up being, and it is, less content and is still for some reason $100, like I think people will be very upset by that. That's like a number one way to like shoot yourself in the foot super hard. So I would hope they at least maybe reduce the prices on some of this stuff. If it does come to that, like maybe make it like 60, maybe make like the full package, right? Of like, hey, you're going to be playing this stuff year in and year out. And then like getting the maybe 1 or 2 episode seasons, and then obviously the free update that's not even included in that because it's gonna be free for people anyway. Like just make that like a $60 thing, and then that's like that gives you everything available to you for that year for Destiny. Unless because trying to bolster that with like a bunch of cosmetic shit, well, I don't think will work on people, and you're just gonna see more people mad about them trying to sell $100 pack. Rather than, being like, oh, wow, they've priced this reasonably, right? Like, I just think it's not going to work if they try and keep that at $100 every year. But, we'll see how that goes. Again, that's still so far off. Who knows what the hell they're going to do. So here we go. Here's some more canceled projects and also some Destiny 3 talk. Destiny 3 was and is considered too big of a risk in the current market. The idea was instead to split up Destiny as an IP into more manageable components. The PvE portion, what we have now, continuing in D2, Payback for an adventure genre expansion, a mobile Destiny game from NetEase, and spinning out a separate 3v3 Crucible game channeling Trials. It appears none of this is happening now, alongside Destiny 3 never being in production in the first place. There are no plans to just shutter Destiny. However, and long-term rebranding remains unclear, but it's Destiny 2 Frontiers content only for the indefinite future, and Marathon remains the big thing right now going into 2025. Again, this idea sounded more interesting to me than just trying to make Destiny 3, where they're trying to like make everything more manageable, like they said, and make things that are like more specific interest with inside Destiny, like having a PvE focused game that is just like, the PvE aspects of Destiny, like running strikes or a bunch of the repeatable content like the coil and whatever, and then having raids and dungeons and stuff, and just that being the game. And then if you like the Bungie shooting in a PvP sense, they would have this new 3v3 Crucibles Trials type game. And then I guess, sorry Gambit, you can we'll wave to the wind for that one, because that sounds like that wasn't gonna be a spin-off there. But like that makes more sense to me, because like Destiny is still like one of the only remaining games that does like everything under one package in some shape or form. Like even Call of Duty doesn't have like, I feel like, it doesn't do campaigns really more. It has like its multiplayer component, and it has like Warzone and stuff where most of that stuff gets funneled into. And then like you might get like a Call of Duty campaign in some versions of the game, but like not every year has one, and they're usually super limited compared to like PvP components of that game. So like no game does that anymore. Like there's just no game that's like this anymore, where they do like, they have like a campaign, single player components and multiplayer mode components all rolled up into this one big game that is trying to constantly evolve every single part of it. It's just too much, clearly, and I like, it made sense to them to like be splitting all these things off. So now they're not doing that at all, and I think that's going to be definitely something that hurts Destiny 2 with its current pack, because it's like, it's hard to know if there is going to be any more stuff like even like the Crucible map pack that we got that was free and had a bunch of new Crucible maps. Who knows if we even get that now? You know what I mean? We'll just have to see. I don't know. Let's see. One of the biggest ongoing issues is that its player base is skewing much older than everyone wants to see, which is worrisome to higher ups. You want to attract a younger crowd, and that was no longer happening, hence the desire for new projects like Marathon and Gummy Bears, and another reason for why no Destiny 3. Yeah, basically being called boomers here, Destiny team, Destiny fans. I get what that sentiment is saying though, right? Because like, I think of like how many people I know that are into Destiny, and like they go back to like, oh man, I love playing Halo and loved playing this, and like grew up in the Xbox 360, PS3 era and beyond of gaming, and then evolved into that, right? Like you pretty much had to like know you liked Halo, right? Like Halo was largely a console game on Xbox, so it made sense if you were in that world, and then shifted into Destiny because Halo sort of ended, and then they went on to Destiny. So I think there's still a lot of people in the community that stem from that, rather than like, you look at something like Fortnite, and like, yeah, there's like constantly new people getting into Fortnite at different variations of levels, where like, or Minecraft, where like, there is a older audience that got into Minecraft, years ago, like decades ago, and they like maybe still play it, but have fallen off. But that game still invites in a new audience of people to come play it for the first time. And things even outside of like live service games, like I look like Pokemon. Like I was into Pokemon when I was in elementary school, and still like it now. But there's been tons of new children and younger audiences that have like grown to love Pokemon and love it now. Where like you don't see people, you see a lot less people going on from like, you see a lot less people getting into Destiny nowadays that are like slightly young, they're in the younger stages of their life. Like I don't think they need to get like, and again, I don't think it means like they want to get a bunch of 10-year-olds into Destiny. I think it's more just like they're people growing up. Those kids are growing up and looking for more mature games, and they're looking at stuff like Fortnite, or I guess like Valorant, or other games, and like look less at something like Destiny. And I think that's what they're struggling with, and I can see that. So I think that's something they have to figure out and make it so it could be potentially inviting to just like anybody off the street can just go like, oh, Destiny, let me try that. That looks interesting. Like they got to figure that out. Let's see. The new player onboarding experience remains bad because the team who did the Cosmic Drone Sean stuff got one crack at it, and essentially no one ever tried anything of significance again. That may change the future plans. Yeah, that sounds awful. Like they should really let that team they should really let another team go at it. I was frankly thinking about doing a separate video that was like an idea I had about how they can repurpose the timeline thing that's already in the game to be sort of an onboarding experience. I think that would be a better way to do it, because I know a lot of people have been going like, just bring back the Red War campaign. That was good for it. And like, you're right, but that's probably a lot of work to like basically rebuild a whole campaign experience to do those. Like again, they've talked about it many times where like it can't just like, it's not just like a simple import of this stuff into Destiny 2. They have to like, basically rebuild it from scratch. So they have to like rebuild those assets and environments and things into the game to even do that. So like, I think it could make more sense to like maybe take bits and pieces from other stuff or from some of that and then infuse it into the timeline and then have it be that, right? Where we have like the Cosmodrome mission from D1 that's already in the game, part of the new player experience. Take that, throw it in the timeline as the start of the timeline, and then have some interstitial scenes from like, I don't know, like making like those little ink blot things they used to do, or some other kind of animatic that like leads you into like, I don't know, like maybe if you were lucky to get like maybe like some Taken King campaign mission, and then feed into maybe the opening Red War campaign mission and do it that way, right? Where you get these little interstitial moments from out the timeline and moments of Destiny that lead you into, that give you like a little campaign mission to do that's fun and give you like a look into this moment in time of Destiny throughout this experience. Again, having the interstitials that kind of connect and give you a little bit of storyline from each. You can have the actual timeline how it is now, where you can hover over things and it'll give you little story blurbs that feed into that, and then lead it into like with the current story of Destiny, where it's like, okay, now if you want to continue the story, hop into this expansion, or let you know which expansion is next, and you can follow that timeline. Like, just use that timeline thing that is already kind of there to like give people a general idea. Just pull that out into like an onboarding experience. Like it makes too much sense to me, in my opinion, to do that. So we'll just have to see where that goes for. It's tangent aside for that one, but let's read into this other stuff that's happening here in Paul's article. Everything is divided up into strike teams now, even individual missions, activity modifiers. They form are dissolved, reform. Speculation is that higher ups saw that players like when they said things like strike teams, so now they're just making a million strike teams. That is awful. Again, clearly like the higher ups like don't actually know. It's like, it seems like they are just kind of like throwing stuff at the wind because they don't know what they're doing. Even with updates, many tools are exhausting to use it and everything takes forever. And if Destiny 2 content is still being added, there will indeed be more vaulting for technical reasons alone. Though whether the no more expansion content vaulting rules apply is unclear. So there you go. There's definitely a hint of like, there might be a vaulting of expansions in the near future. They did make Shadowkeep and Beyond Light free recently, with Stasis being made free. So maybe they made like packs for those as well, where you can make like I think there was like packs where you can buy like the exotics and access to the raids that are in there. So maybe it's finally time for those to go away. I personally would prefer them to do something like I've said again on Hello Tower. Sorry, Gambit fans, but I think it's just like now the team is even more reduced. There's no way that getting any meaningful updates. It's not gotten meaningful updates for years. It got like one reprised map this year, and they never even like mentioned or talked about it getting that map. Like they didn't like put any fanfare behind it. They added the new enemy types in there. Like it's clear like there's just so much going on with the other parts of the game, and that's where people are interested in. So like I think vaulting Gambit makes more sense to me than vaulting like any kind of campaign content at this point. And then like a lot of a lot of my personal qualms with like stuff in the strike playlist where like that thing is blown out of proportion with battlegrounds now, and we just got 3 more battlegrounds with echoes, and I will say they are better than the previous ones, but the idea of like, okay, well they might keep those 3 battlegrounds now, because we ended up learning that they did keep the Defiance battlegrounds in, and those are in the strike playlist now. If we keep those echo battlegrounds, like there's 4 Nessus strikes I believe now, there's 4 Nessus battlegrounds from season of The Chosen, and then there are 3 more battlegrounds that could potentially be added from echoes. That's 7 battlegrounds on Nessus alone, on top of the 4 strikes. Like more than like that would make like more than half of that playlist, nearly more than half the playlist. I think I'm just doing like very quick math in my head. Would just be strikes, or would just be strikes and crap on Nessus. Like that's crazy. Like I would vault at least the Chosen strikes. Like just vault those 4, It seems like they're old enough now that like they've been around. They were just kind of whatever. Like on top of like I think a few of those Nessus ones were just like you're fighting Vex Underground anyway, and these Echoes versions of those are way more interesting. They are fighting Vex and Nessus and on your underground, so they're just way more interesting version of those battlegrounds anyway. So like I would pinpoint that kind of stuff and try and savor as much of the campaign experience as you could, because it would be sad to like lose like campaign content all over again. But you know, we'll have to just see what they do, man. Again, it's a tough time to be a Destiny fan, but I'm hopeful. There's a team there that is trying their best with what they got now to make content for Destiny going forward. Like I said, I've just picked up the game again this week. I immediately was not playing a lot because I'm not super jiving with the rollout of Echoes content. Personally, I didn't want to make a whole video about just me being down on that kind of stuff, because you know they're all figuring it out. Seems like they've gotten the feedback about it, considering Revenant is going to be changing how they release the story content of those acts going forward. I think that's a good change. I don't know if it's a perfect change, but it's at least they're trying stuff and seeing what makes sense and what works. I'm all for that. We're just gonna have to see how Destiny goes, man. I'm gonna cover it here in some shape or form of the channel again. This will never. I think unfortunately, this will, as even though it started as a Destiny focused channel, I think Destiny will just become a game that is a part of many games I cover here on the channel, like others. And you know, I'm gonna look forward to the TWAB this week. You know, I don't expect it to be a huge blowout of news. Like it's suddenly not going to answer all of our lingering questions about the future of Destiny here. Of course, you know, it's probably just going to talk about, you know, Solstice stuff and maybe some other potential updates coming up ahead. But you know, I don't expect bigger news than that. But you know, I will still probably cover it here, and that's probably where you see a lot of my Destiny coverage going forward. Is, you know, maybe talking about some patch notes and talking about the TWABs each week, and depending on if the information in them sounds like it's worth like making a full video about. And of course, you know, I'm gonna be doing some streams in the future soon as well, and I'll probably stream some Destiny. So you know, Destiny still be around this channel, and I personally still like the game much, and I'm wishing for it to find its footing again and find its success. But you know, things just seem really rough out there more than ever for Destiny right now. But we'll just have to see where it goes. If you stuck through it this long in this video, thank you. While listening to me ranting and rambling about Destiny, that's just where we're at with it. You know, appreciate it. You know, I'll probably have some more content in the future going over other games, like First Descendant or some other. I have some other ideas for types of games I want to cover on the channel. So in the coming weeks, you'll start seeing some of that stuff as I get the time to create it and stuff. But thanks everybody for sticking with me here in this weird rocky road. And you know, let's all send our love and support to Bungie as they try and get through this difficult time, and all the people who lost their jobs. You know, that's really what's important. Is like these people did not deserve that, regardless of your feelings or thoughts on Destiny. Like they deserved better, and you know, I hope they can find a place that treats them well, even in this difficult time in the industry, and they aren't overlord by some scumbag who wants to spend all his money on cars rather than making it better for his people. But, you know, whatever. Anyway, everybody, see you next time.